Privileged to have Dr. Deborah Heiser with us this morning. We were introduced through a client of mine, and I reached out to her, and we had this engaging, as far as I'm concerned, it was an extremely engaging conversation about her work and her philosophy and how it relates to all of us in this room as professionals and as far as networking goes. And she was able to articulate some of the thoughts that I've been having for years now in such a unique and different way, with such a refreshing perspective, that I thought it would be nice for all of you to also have an opportunity to hear from Deborah. So that's what this morning's all about. She had an opportunity to introduce the work that she does, but I'm going to repeat it if that's okay. Let me pull it up. It's actually on the back of your brochure as well if you didn't have a chance, and I'm just going to read to you all of the incredible things that Deborah's doing. So, PhD is an applied developmental psychologist, which we're going to learn a little bit more about. A TEDx speaker, Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches, Thinkers 50 Radar List, CEO and founder of the Mentor Project, which she mentioned. Psychology Today contributor and an adjunct professor in the psychology department at SUNY Old Westbury. Deborah has additionally authored peer review articles, is co-editor of Spiritual Assessment and Intervention with Older Adults, and a frequent expert guest for syndicated and local talk radio shows, international and local podcasts, and print and online media outlets. So thank you so much for being here. So I want to first give you an opportunity to go a little bit more into the Mentor Project and about your work specifically, so we can get a sense of what you've dedicated your life to. And
sure.
So go ahead and take some time to do that if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. So most people think I'm the Mentor Project, which is mentee focused, is really that we're looking at children. But I'm looking at this from the perspective of the mentors, people who are often transitioning from one career to another, who are retiring, people who have done amazing things. They're experts in their field around the world. So for example, one of our mentors, who's one of the co-founders, is the guy who patented how to use credit cards on the internet. They've done things that have changed the world. Bill Cheswick is one of the fathers of the firewall. If you put your hand in your pocket, he's probably invented something that's in there. These guys came to me and they said, hey, we would love to mentor and give back. We feel like we're getting irrelevant now, that people don't know who we are or what we did. We've done amazing things, but really people are talking about the things that people are doing now, and they've forgotten where it started. So just so you can understand what they're talking about, every time you shop on Amazon, you can say, thanks, Bob, because you're using your credit card. You can also say, thanks, Bill, because the firewall is what keeps it safe. So they said, we would like to get in front of kids, but we have no way to do that. Bill said, if I go to a park and say, hey, you want to learn about quantum mechanics, they're gonna think I'm a little crazy. And I said, yeah, don't do it. So at any rate, we started the Mentor Project just on the basis of looking at, is the theory that exists in applied developmental psychology that we're built to give back, and that we want to do that without expecting anything in return? Is that really true? Is it going to just be the three of us running around trying to get Bill into schools to teach quantum mechanics, or will something happen? Well, it turned out that this started in 2019. We have over 100 world-class mentors who are now giving back around the world, and we have a waiting list, and we don't take just everyone. These are people who really come to us and they say, what can we do, how can we do it? And it's really, they get so much out of it that if you talk to any one of them, they'll probably tear up, because the impact that they're making is quite phenomenal. So you're an IP attorney. We've already had one student within 6 months have 2 patents that he was able to obtain for free, because we have patent attorneys, and we have Bill and Bob who, you know, are prolific patenters. So this is the sort of thing that is, most people look at what happens with the kids. It's really the mentors. The mentors come up with their own ideas and things. Just like everyone in here, we all have a passion that's even outside of the work that we do. And that's really the basis for what the Mentor Project is.
So
I didn't, sorry, that was.
No, that was a good response, and it gives a little bit of background, and it'll lead me to my next question, which is, you're a trained psychologist, and there's something that we talk about almost all the time, whether it's actually spoken specifically or if it's just there on in the subconscious, which is giver's gain, and this concept of going out of your way for someone else, or being able to provide something to someone else, has such great gratification, and there's such great satisfaction taken from the giver in that role. And you talk about mentoring and the kind of feelings that your clients get from that actual act. So is it an inherent sort of human instinct that we may or may not all be aware of as being so determinative as to our happiness quotient and whether or not we feel satisfied in our work and in our lives? Is there a connection between those two things?
Yeah.
And can you explain
Sure.
what that, yeah, please.
Absolutely. There's a connection there. We're all built to give back. That phrase, "'tis better to give than to receive," is actually true. Research shows this. There's been research from Harvard and from Yale, plenty of other places too, but that shows that when we have meaningful connections and we want to give back to others, we actually feel great. It's a health benefit to us, both physically and emotionally over the lifespan. Those who give and who give through three different ways there are three ways we can be generative, which is giving back to others without expecting something in return. And that is volunteering, mentorship, and philanthropy. So it can be, and that's a wide umbrella. But those who do engage in that, there is, and think about it in here, everyone had an ask. When somebody thinks, wow, I can help them out, doesn't it feel good? I was thinking to myself, oh, wow, it would feel good for me to refer someone for you to speak with. It would make me feel good to find a person that you can make ties for. That makes me feel good. And everyone in here is here because you're looking also to do the same. So that is not unusual. We're built to do that, just like we are to do any physical capability that we all take for granted.
So now I'm going to be tough on our audience just for a second as I analyze our room, as I've done for many, many years, and I'm critical of myself as well. And although it's a natural human instinct, as you just described, and there's such great satisfaction and pleasure taken from the act of being able to give or to provide help, why is it so difficult for so many people to find their way to do those kinds of things on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis when it provides such happiness and such joy? Is there something that gets in the way in our human condition that prevents us from doing something that's inherently something that's so powerful?
There are two things to this. One is that we're probably already doing it and we don't even know it. And when you don't acknowledge something, it's like you're giving it away and not getting any benefit. And you don't realize it. So there's that component. So you're doing it, but you're not getting any of the benefit of it. The other thing is we also ride in a lane, right? And it's usually a hierarchical one. We're saying, let me check the boxes as I go through. We're sort of taking in what we need without thinking of where's the relationship there. And we're sort of conditioned early on to do that. Like, follow what you need, get what you need, go to the next level. You know, when it's go to college, get married, get a job, have kids. We have tasks that we need to do. And so we become focused on those. And so we need to become more focused on how we can have a relationship with someone else and how those interactions that we have can be meaningful. And meaningful can be that I'm helping you, you're helping me, or it can be that we're just both sort of enjoying the time together. So that very small thing can be very impactful to us, is just taking note of when I'm with someone, where's the meaning there and how can I bring meaning to that? And it doesn't take any extra time, it's just being aware.
So, and thank you for that answer. That gives good context, I think, for what we're discussing. And one thing that I think I pride myself on this, because I'm very much aware that I try to be judgment-free, and most human beings our judgment. They're constantly judging other people, judging themselves, whether overly critically or in some way, shape, or form. And I like to try to stay as open-minded as possible. So I'm fighting against that urge to do what I think is really natural, which is to judge somebody for their actions, for the way they conduct themselves, for the way they speak, for the way they go about their business, what they're not doing, what they are, constantly, right? And I feel like during the course of the past couple of years, the pandemic has changed the way in which a lot of people think and feel about their daily lives, about their family life, about their profession, the way in which they just conduct themselves on a daily basis. So trying to overcome what has now seemingly become a way in which we all conduct ourselves differently, because there's so much to be gained by doing what we're doing here today. Gathering early in the morning, getting ourselves out of the house, to a meeting, like-minded people. Obviously, there's a good energy in the room that we feel weekly that's inspiring. Whether we walk out of here with a referral or an introduction or not, we tend to have our best days on Wednesdays, from what I've been able to sort of ask and understand of our group. Now, we're tired because we're up, but it doesn't matter. We were almost able to overcome that. So what I want to know from you is, given the pandemic and the way that people's lives have changed, is there something that they should be doing or could be thinking about to better position themselves? Or is this our new norm? Should we just be more willing to accept the way people have changed their lives? I'm trying to connect it to networking and giving back. And I want to know what your thoughts are on that level.
Sure. There's a lot to unpack with that. First of all, we're used to a very structured environment, and the pandemic sort of took a lot of that away. And there aren't very many rules that we can follow. Do I wear a mask? Do I not? What am I going to do? There's a lot of stuff that's out there that isn't quite clear. So that's something that can be very difficult for everyone. However, this has also been a time where we can have meaningful connections and network in ways that we couldn't before. It's become international just by using Zoom and other mediums like that. You can connect with somebody, say, hey, hop on a quick 30-minute Zoom with me, and people are doing that now much more often than they ever were before. And so the networks can get broader and broader. The one thing that is very important, though, that I've been noticing is that to get back to some form of a schedule and a structure. So like today, it's very important. When you said, would you come to a 7 a.m., I was like, I'm there, because there's something that's not so gratifying for most people, even if you're connecting with individuals. If it's over Zoom or if it's over a phone call, you lose a little bit of that connection. Well, it's very valuable to have that connection that is there. The in-person, seeing people, seeing feet, this is important to all of us. This is something that we actually need to have. So if you can build that in, when they asked, do you want to teach in the fall? I said, bring me in person. I want to go in. It's getting out, just even if it's a quarter of the time that you spent in person before, that is very important. And it will help with networking, but I think that it enhances the networking that you're able to do virtually as well.
So there is a psychological advantage from your perspective to being together in person versus virtually.
There always is. We do get, there are two things to this. It is very important to be able to have connection, and I've always thought of the Zoom and other mediums like that as a great transition method to get together. Even in therapy, if you're doing therapy or working with someone, that's better than none, right? But if you can see someone in person, you can get so much more from the body language. Are they doing this with their leg? What's happening underneath this part? And that is very valuable to know what is happening and what's happening in the space around you. How is a person interacting? So if you're able to do that, you can probably enhance your networking just because of the psychological factors that are involved.
I'm so glad we agree on that. All right, well with that, I wanted to open it up to our members and our guests to ask questions if you're willing to take some questions and get some interaction and get some other people's thoughts. And of course, Jason, go for it.
Yeah, so my dad recently celebrated his 80th birthday, and for me, I feel like since he retired, he doesn't have as much of a purpose, right? And I feel like that's a lot of older people when they retire, they don't have the purpose. So I think it's amazing the work you do. What is the process like? You know, you said there's an application process to become a mentor. What is the process like?
So the process for becoming a mentor is that you can reach out. We have a contact sheet on our website. It's mentorproject.org, and a person can reach out and say they'd like to mentor.
Okay.
And that's great. If I were to talk about purpose, this is really an important factor that we all face. It isn't something just unique to your dad. Every one of us will face this at some point. And we switch our purpose oftentimes as well throughout our life. My purpose now is a little bit different than before I had children, those sorts of things. So when you're in a transition, looking for the purpose is very important, and tying that back to who you are and the identity. And that identity issue that most people have related to their job, if that ends, where is that purpose and where is that identity? So for your dad and for anybody else who's looking at purpose in their life, if you can tie it back to something that's meaningful to you as an individual, that's going to be very important.
Yeah.
Not title related.
Yeah.
David Sachs, and then Stephanie, and then Terrence.
So you mentioned something about being tied to your job, and I would imagine that's probably one of the strongest ties there is, you know, more than if you play a lot of golf. In my industry, I've seen a lot of older men. My first boss was born in 1909, lived to be 101 years old, came into the office every single day until the day he died. And I've seen probably a dozen men like that. And that purpose kept them busy, alive, and happy. And it you know, it just didn't seem like it was a coincidence to me that they worked until the very, very last day.
That'll be Brian Zimmer.
Is there something
There is.
there?
Purpose is a big, think of yourselves, if you don't have purpose, that feels great for a couple of days, right, you know? But then you start to question yourself, why am I doing this? Why is it important? Why do I matter? It gets deeper and deeper. So purpose is incredibly important. It really does tie back to identity. And we are conditioned to think of our identity with our title from when we're little. When we ask a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? That really starts, you know, at toddler age. And the books are about it and everything like that. So as we go through, people say, when people ask, who are you? You give your title. That's really how we introduce ourselves. So when I told about myself, nobody here knows any more of the deeper things that matter to me or make me who I am, but that is what can make a shift for somebody with regard to purpose. So when people are choosing to live a work all the way through, they're able to maintain that sort of title that they have, which is tied to purpose.
So you're saying title is vital?
Yeah. You get that, Roy? Steph, and then Terrence, and then Sandra.
So I'm at a point in my life where I'm kind of in the prime of my career, but I also have young kids and I'm incredibly busy. But mentorship and paying it forward is very, very important to me. Any advice on finding a balance of being able to do it all?
You know, you are in the toughest stage. This is when most people are saying, I can't even imagine giving back. So that you are is awesome. It's really amazing because most people don't have that bandwidth. The best thing that I can say is you probably are giving back and you don't know it. You're probably mentoring and you don't realize it. So if you're able to acknowledge that every time you help somebody out, every time you're networking and you connect somebody, every time that you're giving a little bit of your expertise back, acknowledge that for yourself, because then you're going to be able to say, okay, I am doing that. It's going to make you do it more often, and it's also going to help you to ask others for help when you need it. It just sort of helps that. I hope that's helpful.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Terrence, and then Sandra, and then Jennifer.
You focused on the mentor. How do you connect mentors to mentees? Is that something that you do, or you just guide mentors and then they find their own mentee?
So what we do is, with mentorship, is we, instead of creating a box that the mentor needs to go in, then it's not their project, right? Then they're following somebody else's passion or purpose. What we do is when we have a mentor who comes in, we say, what do you want to do? How do you want to give back? What's your sort of, it's like, I think of it as like make a wish for mentors. What is it that you're wanting to do? So one person said, I want to be able to paint murals in Tanzania on a school that has never had art, and then teach them art throughout the year. We make it happen. It could be something like getting National STEM Honor Society and STEM into the third poorest county in the United States, which is Robeson County, and that mentor will work to make that happen. We build a sort of a network around that person and make that happen. We also, if a student calls in and they say, hey, I need a mentor, like what happened with the student who patented twice. He was sitting in his basement during the pandemic creating things, and his parents were like, we don't know what he's doing, and someone help us out. And then we set him up doing one-on-one meetings over Zoom for about 6 months with some of our mentors. So it depends. We're very organically driven so that we can make sure that we fit the need of both the mentor and the mentee.
All right, last two, Sandra and then Jennifer.
Okay, well, Deborah, I do know that you're from Iowa. So I know more than just your description here, and that you would move to California in a heartbeat. So I was listening. But I constantly struggle, and I'm sure a lot of people struggle with how do you define success, and when do you feel successful? Because you are working with top people that have done great things, but then lose their purpose. So it's all tied together. But like, how do you feel successful? It's like, what does that even mean? Because I'm constantly moving to the next thing, and I've won an Emmy. I've had great success, right? Like, there are big things, but I forget about that in 2 seconds, and then I feel terrible about where I am.
You're completely where a lot of, almost everybody is generally. And that's because we chase that box that we check, right? So, and then we're like, on to the next. Just like you said, we're built to sort of do that. We're primed to check the boxes as we go through. The one thing that we can always do is, you know, academics have a CV, right? So you can sort of collect your thing, and it's like 12 pounds, you know, by the end of your career. Bell Labs, which is a research institution, they have the I am great sheet that you do at the end of the year, where you write down all the good stuff that you've done throughout the year. Doing something like that and acknowledging what you've done is really important. Most of us don't do that. We don't even take a breath and stop to say, hey, I did that. Why does that matter to me? Why does that mean something? And how can I fit that into what I want to do next, so that it's not a sort of a leap, pause, and then leap and pause, so that it's a sort of a continuum that we're able to do. That is usually what's most helpful for individuals, is making sure that we acknowledge those accomplishments that we have, but tying it into why did I do it, and where do I want to take that next. So I hope that that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it's a constant struggle, but it's definitely helpful.
It is a constant struggle, and that's because most people who are successful, if you accomplish something, you almost have an energetic impulse to want to do it again and again and again. Look at that as a good thing. The success is continuous, and what level do you want to reach at the end? And that may, if you have an end goal and what you want to get, that's also going to be helpful.
Thank you.
One last question, Jennifer.
So I'm going to videotape and ask a question. First, a really quick comment. It's really interesting that I spent 7 months in Italy, and the first question was never, what do you do?
Yeah.
It is in America. But my question is about relationships, and that's something that's really important to this chapter. So it's not just work, right? So if you take the example of my mother, she was a huge career woman, 25 years, international head of HR, top ad agency. She now finds herself, she doesn't have the job for structure. The pandemic has been extremely isolating. You know, and I believe it was the Harvard Happiness Project that said that, you know, relationships have so much to do with longevity. So I was just curious what you're feeling. You know, I don't know if your mentorship program is strictly work related, or what you would advise for older people who have lost touch with so much of their prior network.
you know, that's, there are 3 different things that a person can do to get back into that. And it's a form of generativity that we want to get back to. It's being generative. And there are 3 things: volunteering, mentoring, and philanthropy. So each of those it's like a 3-legged stool. They're all equal in terms of how we can feel about it. You can do one or you can do all. Now, if you are engaging in those are structured. There is a structure to that. You know, if you're going to even make a connection with someone, there is a structure to that. You're picking a time. You're doing something that is going on a calendar in some way. So if you can encourage someone to get involved somewhere, doing something that they really enjoy or feel passionate about. I've seen people who have had a passion, an artist who ended up saying, I'm going to volunteer with colleges to get their teams to the fields, and they got to be down on the field for all of the college football games, which was meaningful to that person. So that volunteering job was beneficial in 2 different ways. It can be a docent somewhere. Some people go and do Habitat for Humanity because they were not able to do the Peace Corps earlier on in their lives, and they may have wanted to do that. Getting involved can be as big or as small as a person wants, but adding that little bit of structure is really going to help for a person who's been suffering from the pandemic unstructure that we all have.
I want to thank you for being the easiest person for me to convince to be in our room. And of course, for all your insight this morning. Thank you for taking the questions from me and from our members. I really appreciate you, the work that you do. You're welcome back here anytime you want. And if there's any way that anyone in the room can help you, either connecting you with mentees or with mentors, that would be our pleasure. So let's